Thanks so very much for attending our webinar today. I know your time is valuable, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak with all of you. Our subject matter revolves around the current state of the external security landscape as it exists today, and we're going to kind of focus that on things that your firewall needs to be doing for you that may or may not be doing. Um, my name is Neil Derryberry. I'm a network architect for Champion Solutions Group. Champion is a value-added reseller. We're located in Boca Raton, Florida. We specialize in all things data center for our clients. Networking and security are key pieces of this strategy. At Champion, I've got the pleasure of working with many of our clients of varying size, and that experience really is the catalyst for bringing this webinar to you today so that I can relate some of those to you. I've got a couple of simple goals for this webinar. One of them, I want to get you talking within your staff and your business about where you stand with your current security posture. Two, I want to relate a few ways that Champion can help arm you to have those internal discussions. If you learn anything at all from me today, I'd like for it to be the awareness of this single statement. The security landscape as we know it has changed. The focus has changed. The traffic patterns have changed. I want to take a high-level look at some of those trends. The applications that your internal users consume are moving out of your data center at a very rapid rate. For many companies, this shift is already occurring, and for an ever-increasing number of companies, this shift has already occurred. I know this because we've been down this road right here at Champion. From where I sit today, there isn't a single thing that I use in day-to-day business serving our clients that resides in our corporate data center. If I've got an internet connection, I can do everything it is that I need to do. Not only are your applications moving out of your data center, your workers are in large part aren't tied to that office building anymore. Companies are embracing this trend in larger numbers as a way to save on how much their physical facility costs them. This trend has ushered in a topic that many companies are still trying to get their arms around, and that's BYOD. Not only can I do my work from anywhere on the planet, I can do it from any device I like and compute the way that I, as a user, want to. The problem with that is obvious. If we don't have a strategy to manage a growing list of software and hardware, our infrastructures become more and more vulnerable. This data point is the proof. Over 300 malicious applications that your users can download to their Android devices are discovered each and every week. I dare say that number is probably higher than this data point. So we talked about applications moving out of your data center. They had to go somewhere, right? They went to someone else's data center. Some of those services were contracted and are paid for by your organization and your department. Office 365 is an excellent example. Others are being used without your knowledge and have become core to many business processes without your technology team being involved. We call this shadow IT, and we've got to figure out a way to coexist with it. Even though many of our users are moving outside of the four walls we've built, we will generally always have users inside of them consuming resources. They're still consuming those outside applications, mind you. They're just using your office for the bandwidth. The problem with encryption is simply this. Sessions are encrypted. We can generally see where users are going, but we don't have a clear picture of what they're doing. That said, do we really see where users are going? With the move to cloud-provided infrastructure, that destination becomes very hard to read since those services live next to each other using shared resources. Remember that point for a little further in the conversation. So we've covered how the landscape has changed. Our firewalls need to be able to roll with those punches. And unfortunately, many of those firewalls just aren't capable of doing that. Firewalls today need to be able to understand applications to adequately protect our networks. Blocking applications based on ports just is not sufficient any longer. Some of the applications our users are consuming today also aren't necessarily written by the usual suspects, those larger ISVs and software vendors. They're written by smaller shops, sometimes independent developers. your offices, your staff are relying on that software to get things done. Now, this isn't a judgment against those little guys by any means. That said, sometimes these applications aren't necessarily written with interoperability in mind. If we were just looking at TCP ports coming across your firewall, you already know, those of you that administer firewalls, that many applications utilize the same ports. One application can step on another application in that way. How is our port-based firewall supposed to cope with that? The only thing we can do is limit communications by source and destination addressing. That approach, unfortunately, just doesn't scale. And that's something you can kind of blame the cloud for. Case in point, we operate a multi-million-dollar lab here at Champion. We installed a new piece of storage gear in the lab that has the benefit of phoning home kind of on steroids. It's constantly dumping its logs up to that particular vendor so that they can proactively monitor performance. As I'm working on the network gear in the lab stack, I see frequent HTTPS connections to some nondescript URL at Amazon. I do some research and start examining what changed in the environment because this is not normal. Turns out that is this particular storage box doing its job and dumping its logs the way it was designed to do. The problem here is pretty obvious. I could not tell that process apart from other processes running because my firewall down there at the time had no way to know that. When our firewall was able to understand applications, we can begin to refine our security policies and make them more effective. So as we just covered, SaaS apps are often co-located on the same cloud service, and that makes them hard to tell apart from one another. That problem is made worse for us as security administrators because most of these applications are encrypted. My log dumping storage array was using HTTPS to deliver its payload to its parent via Amazon. While that's a good thing for corporate security, the encryption that is, it makes it very hard to see what's going on because that encryption happens before the traffic traverses the firewall. My firewall is blind to the payload of that traffic, so I can't enforce policy on the content, only on the source and destination. To make matters worse, I'm probably not stopping encrypted traffic outbound from my firewall. I'll bet that many of you on this call have a rule written on your firewall that allows HTTPS traffic destined for anywhere on the internet to leave unimpeded. If you don't, that's great. That said, if you're consuming cloud apps hosted on one of the big cloud providers, you pretty much have to allow outbound access to that cloud provider, or application XYZ just won't work. Let's say Sally in accounting needs to be able to access application XYZ so she can process your payroll, so you're stuck. The cloud isn't necessarily a safe place. I can get cloud space somewhere fast and cheap and start developing the next killer app very easily. Maybe I'm so focused on my app and its explosive growth that I've neglected to secure the site. Before you know it, my site gets hacked, becomes a distribution point for an exploit kit. Because my app shares some back-end namespace with other apps on that same cloud service that you've had to whitelist because of the XYZ app I mentioned, because you'd kind of like to get paid, you're vulnerable. You are one spear phishing email away from having ransomware on your network. That brings me to the next thing your firewall must be able to do, and that is decrypt SSL. If I can open those encrypted packets, I can detect what apps are really running on the network. I can see command and control apps and stop them before things get bad. I can see the unauthorized use of Dropbox and stop it. The list goes on. If your firewall can't open encrypted traffic, it is nearly blind. SSL decryption isn't necessarily hard to implement, but it requires a lot of planning on our part. You've got to really understand how much encrypted traffic is passing out of and into your network across your firewall. The reason for this is the amount of processing load that SSL requires. 2K and 4K keys will make that firewall take a hit. You've also got to be able to leave sensitive traffic alone, like online banking. Your employees are going to go to these sites and check things day to day. You don't want their online banking passwords, but you still need to be able to secure things. So you've got to leave that traffic alone without it being very cumbersome to manage. And then there's the impact to users on the inside of your network. Basically, when we're decrypting SSL, we are engineering a man-in-the-middle attack. The way to minimize that impact is to have a solution for your internal public key infrastructure. Your user machines need to be able to trust the firewall. You also need to be able to notify them or not notify them, depending on company policy, that you're doing this. This is your corporate wire we're talking about. It's possible you may need to consider a firewall platform that can decrypt in hardware instead of software. Now, there's nothing wrong with software SSL decryption if your firewall has the gas to do it. It's something that this review is absolutely critical to be able to make that decision. For extremely high transaction per second rates in your environment, you might need to offload this to an outboard ADC that does this in hardware but does it very quickly to get decryption to happen at those high rates. So Palo Alto Networks is a leader in this space, and Champion has partnered with them to help our clients improve their security posture. Palo Alto's in the upper right Magic Gartner quadrant, place they want to be. The approach we're seeing our clients adopt is really helping them to get ahead of the curve and get back to a secure position. Palo's hardware offering enables that in these ways. The Palo boxes scale from small office, home office to data center core. We can size a box for your environment, not a one-size-fits-all box that's either barely enough or too much. We can also integrate with your existing firewall hardware when we have to. We have a mode on our firewall called vWire. Basically, I become a bump in the wire. I can enforce policy and do everything I need to do with a packet without being layer 3. I'm also capable of watching all of your network segments. A lot of times using that very vWire I mentioned allows you to see everything. You can start watching your connections to your SAN, watch connections to your database server, all through creative use of the ports on the box. We can do SSL decryption on the box. Certain levels of the box, it's done in software. Other levels of the box, that it is done in hardware. Sizing is imperative, and a discussion is imperative so that we know what we need to do. The other thing that Palo is extremely efficient. Instead of having multiple blades one at a time inspecting packets, we open a packet one time. We do all of the inspection we're going to do, close the packet, and send it on its way. That reduces latency, and in high transaction per second environments, that's extremely important. The boxes have dedicated processors on them. That allows us to fully inspect the traffic without really taking a performance hit. We're able to completely use that box. And it replaces a conga line of point solutions. URL filtering, antivirus, VPN, endpoint security can all happen directly on the Palo Alto firewall. Saves a lot of CapEx, saves a lot of latency with multiple solutions. We also integrate very well with third-party SIEMs like QRadar, which is a product in our security ops platform that we sell. We have true standards-based interoperability with anything, Splunk, you name it. We can integrate with those SIEMs. One of the other must-haves that you've got to deal with is zero-day threats. The zero-day threats really are our Achilles heel, and it comes down to software and software signatures. We can't react fast enough when the latest vulnerability for XYZ comes out. Most devices that you're running today require some downtime to get to the latest signatures or the latest firmware. It's not something that in the past we've been able to do on the fly. So Palo Alto has an answer for that. It's called Wildfire. It's true automated zero-day protection. Today, it updates every 15 minutes automatically without affecting traffic flow. That timing will be improving. The threat data for wildfire is gathered worldwide from Palo Alto customers that are running the wildfire subscription service. If the latest version of a exploit kit is detected on a firewall running in China that's on wildfire, the packet is sandboxed by Palo and determined to be something that needs to be paid attention to. A patch is written, developed from that collected data, and sent down to all of our wildfire customers. It's automatically applied, and you're within 15 minutes of current today. And again, these patches are applied automatically and without interrupting the data flow. There's no downtime to stay current. We can also extend this service to endpoints. Palo has an endpoint product called Traps. And Traps allows you to push policy and enforce policy on all of your devices, your corporate devices that can remain connected via VPN to your home base and take advantage of wildfire and the threat cloud. The hardware is just one piece of this multi-tier architecture that we've been talking about. They all work together with software and processes to truly mitigate risk to your environment. So I hope I've been able to move the needle a little bit, give you some topics for conversation around security in your business. I'd like to up the ante and give you some further ammunition to have those conversations. What we'd like to do at Champion is give you, your business, a free network security assessment. There's no strings attached to this. The process is really simple, causes no downtime, does not affect your traffic flow in any way. If you haven't done this kind of assessment in the past, you absolutely need to know where you stand, and I'd like to help you do that. If you have, that's great. The report that I can give you only adds to the data that you've already got and gives you greater insight and likely corroborates some of that. You could use the assessment as well. So basically the process, we set up an initial call, you and I, to map out the logistics of how we handle it and determine what size box we need to do this proof of concept. We place that box on a span port attached to your switching that's mirroring the inside interface of your existing firewall. We gather data for a week, and then we pull the data file out of the Palo Alto device, sanitize it, and gather those statistics to develop a security lifecycle review. We come back to you with that report, shows you what's running on your network today, things you know, things you don't. We have detected full breaches in progress in the process of doing these proof of concepts. And this is all free. So what's in it for you? The SLR gives you a really clear picture of the applications, not the ports, the applications that your users are consuming on your network. We're able to outline the vulnerabilities that these catch-all security policies just really can't identify. Again, process is non-disruptive, and the baseline data that we were able to produce and give you in a really nice report that's usable at all levels of your organization would have cost you thousands of dollars to produce. So there really is zero risk. So some next steps for you. We're going to send out the slide deck. I went through it kind of quick. Didn't want to take up too much of your time, but just provoke some thought and provoke some phone calls and communications. We'll send out the slide deck so that you can share it with your staff. If you'd like to contact me, and I would love for you to do that, call us 800-771-7000, or my email address is right there. I do answer my email. So reach out to me, send me a note if you've got any questions. And then we'll, if you would like that free network assessment, we'll send you out a sample report to kind of show you what it is that you're getting, and we'll be glad to set that process up for you. I really would like to thank you for your time. Thank you today for attending. If any of you have any questions, I've got some folks helping me on the webinar. If you could dump those in the chat box. I'm around for a few minutes, as long as we need to, really, to be able to answer those questions. And the chat box really is the most efficient way to do that. So I'm going to stand by and watch that. Any questions, dump them in there, and I'll answer them by voice, and we can talk as soon as you would like. Again, any questions, put them in the chat box there. Got a couple. So what kind of, Joe is asking, what kind of SSL data rates have I observed that are high enough to require the hardware decryption? Usually the breakpoint that I'm seeing, anybody who's considering high speed, 10 gig, those platforms are capable of hardware decryption. It's kind of hard to say because it really depends on what type of SSL we're talking about, how big the keys are. So I wish I could just give you a figure. I really can't. But Joe, I'd love to talk to you and learn more about your use case, and we can arrive at that. Let's see, another question here. Does Palo Alto Firewall support SSL VPN termination? It absolutely does. And one of the things that I didn't cover, because it wasn't one of the 3 points, we'll be doing multiple of these webinars, is that VPN is free on the Palo Alto device. Depending on what you're doing with it, there's no licensing for it. Soon to be, I know that function is changing, and it's changing for the better, is the most I can say without getting in a lot of trouble. And that's the cornerstone of the endpoint solution. You have corporate devices in the field. They all need to be attached for you to be able to affect policy effectively. So that's the thinking is if everybody is on all the time, I can very quickly watch all of my assets, affect policy, and keep everything secure. Okay. Does it, and Albert asks, does it have a pre-identifier for bad websites like OpenDNS to stop before it gets to the gateway? We can do a couple of things. It's very custom. You can do custom lists. A lot of the rule classifications are done in profiles. For instance, the URL filtering, I can tell it's no gambling sites with a checkbox, and that list that's maintained by Palo and their data sources is automatically dumped to the firewall. So I don't have to know every gambling site, for instance. I can disable them all by category, and that's on multiple things. How much does a low-end firewall cost? Well, that's a bigger conversation. And as an engineer, the nice thing that I don't have to deal with at Champion is costing. I deal with the solution. So low-end depends. I'm happy to have that conversation with you. I need to kind of understand your definition of low-end versus where that goes. So Anwar, if you want to reach out to me, we can have that conversation. Does it identify and block crypto wall type viruses? This has been a big discussion. Some of the latest exploit kits, some of the ransomware that's out there is extremely evasive. They're hosted all over the place. The hosting list changes hourly. It's I was at Palo's engineers conference last week, and we dedicated an hour to discussing this. Um, there's a couple things you've got to do to really effectively stop it. Certainly, application awareness is important. SSL decryption is of critical importance in this. You've got to be able to crack those packets open, because when a piece of malware or an exploit kit gets in and starts to take hold, first thing it does is it establishes a secure tunnel back to wherever home is. And if we're not able to crack open those SSL packets, we're not going to see things until it's too late. Can I put my contact slide back up? Absolutely. There it is. I will tell you that email is the fastest way to get to me. That 800 number rings our corporate line. My extension here is 173. Feel free to give me a ring. I do get a lot of calls, so I will say that email is probably the best, but leave me a voicemail if I don't answer directly, and I'll be happy to answer your questions. Let's see. Andres, let me read your question here. I'll bet that most network engineers are Cisco guys, and some like you are not familiar with Palo Alto. That would have been me a little while ago, a couple of years ago. Do you provide some kind of training on administration of these devices? Yes, I absolutely help. When we do the POC process, we actually show up in person to get this done. So I show you a lot of the way the device works there, certainly not at huge depth. There is formal training. I'm happy to enable you as much as I can, as much as it makes sense. They're actually really easy firewalls to administer. The automation is important, but if you understand firewalls and how rules are written, it's not a stretch. In fact, a lot of things are a whole lot easier from, say, your Cisco or your Checkpoint. They're a breath of fresh air for a lot of administrators. I love the questions, guys. Keep them coming. Okay, we're at 2:30. I really do appreciate your time today. I'm going to leave this contact slide up once I learn how to speak here. Please feel free to send me an email. Happy to talk to all of you, and we'll be sending out the slide deck. We've got the attendee list, so you'll be receiving that, and we really want to get in and help you do and consult whatever we can. So thank you for your time today, and I hope you have a pleasant day.